Hey guys, today I'm going to be doing a discussion video for Zenith by Sasha Ellsberg and Lindsay Cummings. I want to start off by saying that none of this discussion is scripted. I mean, I hate scripting stuff. It takes me way too long, and then once I do it, I never stick to the script, so I just don't. I do have my notes in my lap that I will probably be looking down at every now and again, so I talk about everything I want to talk about, but for the most part, this is probably going to be a hot mess. So, first off, I want to talk about the plot, which seemed non-existent. Everything felt like the characters were just following along with the storyline plot while having no plot of their own. That may not make any sense, but if some of the people who read the book may know what I mean. The plot was almost non-existent, and it was so weak. The reasoning for General Cortez getting Andy and her crew to do this mission in the first place was very weak, because Dex wasted 2 months trying to track them down when General Cortez could have just sent someone else in to get his son. There was no reason besides the fact that Andy and her crew were disposable that he would get them to do this. And it's like, if you're gonna waste 2 months searching for them, just go get your son. You're worried about starting a war, but the fact that them kidnapping your son in the first place would be enough to start a war. I don't care about anything that was revealed later on in the book. It would start a war, especially given everything that he knows about Valen. It also doesn't seem like he would be very worried about starting a war with Zenpetra, considering the fact that the planet is almost completely depleted of life. They don't have a strong military force. They have actually no military force at all, and the people are near starved to death, so they can't put up much of a fight. So him being afraid of starting a war is just a very weak reason to bring Andy and our crew in. The fact that, you know, they're disposable is very believable, but at the same time, it's like, why would your son's been missing for 2 years? I don't see you waiting another 2 months after you found out his location if you actually cared. It also didn't help with the whole didn't want to start a war thing when he parades Valen around after he's returned and pretty much says Zenpetra, you know, kidnapped him, and it's like, why? This starts a war right here, what you're doing. So that was very weak. And also very weak plot device I felt was Andy being the Bloody Baroness, because who kills someone and, like, after a year of training with a bounty hunter, thinks that the only way to cover up this one death is to kill hundreds of other people, but the killing of those hundreds of people also torture you at night so you can't sleep. It makes very, very little sense. But I'll get more into that later on. Now, the writing is one of the reasons that I almost DNF'd this book at like 13% of the way through. Whoever, I don't know, it's been a while since I've read Lindsay's Murder Complex duology, so I don't know whose writing was the very flowery, poetic, and trying to be deep writing style. I don't know who that was, but it gave me a headache. It made no sense. Overall, it made reading the book so tedious. It also made it very easy to tell when one author was writing and when the other one would pick up, because we'd have a chapter where I would like really be into the chapter, and then all of a sudden we'd have this very flowery, poetic description of something, and it would just like throw me out of the story. I would like completely detach any interest I had, and just seriously, I would just, most of the times when this happened, I would just set the book down and I'd play Pokemon Let's Go, because I wasn't into that. Now, as for the pacing of this book, I read this book in like 6 days, so I know a lot of people have been reading it for months, and I can 100% say I understand why. The pacing for the first 300 pages is horrible. It drags so much. I would be reading for hours, like 5 or 6 hours, and I would only get like 40 or 50 pages read, and that is not me. I can read that amount in an hour from a good book. But not that I'm saying this book isn't good. I can see how people like it. I I enjoyed like the last 40 or 50 pages of it, but it's just the pacing for those first 300 pages is horrible. And once I got past that point, it picked up. It was still bad, but it picked up. The last about 50 pages of the book is the only part I can say that had decent pacing. And even that's like stretching it to a point, because I think 3 of the chapters in those 50 pages were flashbacks in a dream. I was also incredibly bored during like the majority of this book. We'd have big chase scenes and action sequences, and I would just be bored to tears. Like I was saying, the last 40 or 50 pages was the only part that I actually had any interest in. It's especially when they crash landed on Adhira. All of that was just so dull and boring. I couldn't wait to get off that planet. It was just, I can see how it would be necessary. The reason for them crash landing on that planet was weak, but I can see how this, they wanted you to get to know more about Lyra and stuff, so she's the only other perspective from the crew that we get, so I can see why they would put this in the book. I hated it. I hated being on this planet, mostly because nothing happened at all. Also, another writing problem I had is, why was it that in one of Andy's chapters and pretty much all of Dex's chapters, I think there was like 2 or 3 exceptions to this, why did it go from Dex's point of view to Andy's point of view? Why was this necessary? Why have chapters dedicated to perspective if you're just going to switch the perspective like a couple pages in and then switch back to that perspective like a page or so later? Why? Why did we need the perspective of that other person in that point in time? There was also a lot of words that were being overused. For example, hell, soul, stars, loosed. Loosed? Oh my god, I was ready to throw the book every time I saw this word being used. There are so many other words they could have used to describe the same exact thing, but no, they use loosed. Also, delicious. They even described the ship as delicious, which I think I tabbed that part, but we'll get to that later. But they described so many things at the beginning of the book as delicious, and thankfully I think after about 100 pages that stopped. But stop. There are so many other things you can use to describe something without being delicious, and I don't know how a ship can be delicious anyways. And probably the second most irritating thing behind loose, actually no, the third, because stars was irritating. I get so tired of seeing the word stars. It's like, we get it, we're in space, stars everywhere, but stop using the word stars, please. It's like, in a page, it could be used like 4 or 5 times, and it was so irritating. But when they described something as, let me see, how did I write it down? Well, I wrote it down, it happened on 3 different pages towards the beginning of the book, where they described something as having a lot of speed and agility, when speed and agility are the same thing. And this, I let it go the first time, but then it happened again and again, and I'm like, it was just irritating. It's like, speed and agility are the same thing. I even looked it up to make sure that I was correct on this, because even though I was like 95% sure that I was correct on this, I looked it up just in case, because I didn't want to say something and then, count it against the book when it wasn't something to be mad about, because they were different things. But no, even online, on dictionaries, everywhere, it says that speed and agility are the same thing. So that was powerfully annoying. I also didn't like that they use Earth speech patterns, and the most common example of this was stars forsaken. That is basically God forsaken, and there was a lot of other speech patterns that were used that would just irked me, but that was just the most prominent example. It's like, why do we have Earth speech patterns? It's like, especially on every single planet. I also don't understand why everyone speaks the same language. You would think that there would be a language for, if not every planet, then at least every solar system. It's just unbelievable that this would be like the main language for everyone. But that's more world building, which I'm going to talk about next. First off, I loved the name of the planets. I thought that was very creative. But the world building as a whole in this book was non-existent. Besides Arcardius and Adheron, we didn't get to know about any of the other dozens of planets they mentioned. You can say that we got to learn a little bit about Solera and everything, but no. I would not count that. All we know is it's a cold planet. That is it. They also made a lot of references to things that they've created in this world that they don't tell us anything about them really. I mean, a few here and there, we get like a little bit of description so that we can kind of guess what they are, but overall, I don't know what any of these things are that you've mentioned in this world, that you've created. I actually went through and made a list of all of the words or terms used in this world that I don't know what they mean. I'll just point out a few of them. Tenimbrian Guardian. We don't know exactly what a Tenimbrian Guardian is. I don't even know if I'm saying the name right. We don't know what they do as a whole. We don't know how that whole system works. Is this separate from the Arcadian military, or is it like a branch off? What is it? I don't know. Aero class. I don't know what that means. Zempetran carriage slug. This I assumed was the size of a carriage until it says that they went undercover, and I was like, how can something the size of a carriage go undercover? So now I'm very questionable about what that is. Moonshoe, the most popular one of all, I believe is something like chewing tobacco, since they say it can kill her. I'm just guessing there. Spiced Rigna, I don't know if it's a food, a drink, a drug, or a variation of a drink, alcohol, because they kind of compared it to alcohol, but I'm not 100% sure. And I have lived on a farm my entire life, and there's Hebron crops. I'm pretty sure I'm saying that completely wrong, but it just tells us that these are the crops that they use for their celebration for the end of the war, the peace treaty or whatever. But yeah, they're just a crop that's grown on Adhera. We don't know anything about them. We don't know if they're used to make clothes or for food, or if they're just a crop that's kind of like how people sell flowers. It's just a crop to sell to be decorative. We don't know, and we never will know. Next, I want to talk about the religion and government, and I think I'll start with the government because it makes me less angry. And there's a few things that I'm going to forget that will probably go in through with the tabs. But the government. Why does every solar system share the same governments? The unified systems is a very good idea. I like it. But I don't believe that every solar system is going to have a capital planet with one person that rules the entire solar system. This is very unbelievable. If you had something like each planet has their own governing ruler, I could believe that. But for one person to be in charge of the entire solar system, that is completely stretching it right there. No. I mean, I'm not saying it couldn't be possible if there's like maybe 2 or 3 planets in that entire solar system, but at the same time, it's highly unlikely that anyone would get behind a single ruler, especially if that ruler wasn't on their planet. I don't see it as a plausible thing. Especially with a ruler like General Cortaz, I can see somebody assassinating him before he can even actually get to where he was. Now, as for the religion, this makes even less sense because we were given a brief chapter like towards the end of the book about Andy's, their religion on Arcardius and everything, and the God Stars, and this would be fine if this was just an Arcadian religion, or if it was even the religion of this solar system. I could almost believe that, but the way God Stars is used throughout this book, especially towards the end, through several different character points of view, some that do not live in the same solar system as Arcardius. I think I said Adheron earlier. I apologize, but I meant Arcardius. The thing is, they use it, and I don't see the same religion being used or being believed in every solar system. I mean, it's stretching it that the religion itself is already in one whole solar system without each planet having their own different religion. Because, I mean, we live in the United States. people have like 6 or 7 different religions. I'm not going to go look up and count how many there actually are. But people in the United States, we all live in the same country, and we have several different religions. So the fact that not only one planet, not only one solar system, but one entire galaxy shares the same religion is just laziness. And you can't say that they don't share the same religion if you have 3 or 4 people from different solar systems using the same term God stars like it is their God overall. I mean, I don't mean to offend you by saying that. That is just the only way I can actually think to describe it right now off the top of my head. But it's just, it's unbelievable. It's laziness, and it's just very, very frustrating. Because honestly, they give the characters from Ed Huron like little things that they do on their planet, that they're a peace-loving planet and everything. I kind of imagine them as hippies. So I assumed that they would have a different religion. But even Lyra uses the term God stars, and it's like, okay, so she has the same religion. They're a peace-loving planet. They do all of this stuff that's so different from Arcadius, but they have the same religion? It did not make sense to me at all. Now, the last thing I want to talk about before we get to the tabs is the characters. I'm going to say right now that I cared nothing for any of these characters. I didn't hate them. I didn't love them. I didn't think they were meh. I didn't feel anything for them. I mean, all of them could have died in the end, and I don't think I would have cared at all. They could have had a happy ending where everybody had the perfect love interest and they were going to live happily ever after, and I don't think I would have cared either. I mean, none of them felt well developed. I couldn't form a connection to any of them, and overall, I just got tired of them, like, early on. I mean, I had hopes that I would like Lyra since I liked the first chapter, but it was like, that first chapter started out good, and then it switched to that deep writing style, and it just, I couldn't stand it. And like I was saying about Andy earlier, unless she has a split personality disorder, the Bloody Baroness identity didn't need to exist. There was plenty of other things that she could have done to live and, you know, keep her crew and her safe in the galaxy. She came from a military planet where she was raised to protect people. She could have been taking jobs where she could have been protecting people or rescuing people or doing just random scavenging jobs, if nothing else. She didn't have to go around killing people. I mean, like I said, the whole thing with her killing people to cover up the death of Kali, that was so flimsy that I didn't believe it to begin with. I mean, unless she has a split personality disorder where she actually is on one side the Bloody Baroness who loves killing people, and then on the other she's Andy who regrets everything. But everything I read about split personality disorders, which granted has not been a lot, most people don't remember what that other split personality is doing. I'm kind of iffy on that, because on the one hand, it feels like they were trying to go for split personality disorder and missed the mark. And on the other hand, if that's not what they were going for, then it's just a weak, flimsy reason why they made her the Bloody Baroness. They just wanted a really kick-ass character that liked killing people at this point. That was basically the only reasoning behind giving her this identity when there were several other things she could have done. I mean, she grew up on a military planet. She was raised to protect people. There's no reason why she would go around slaughtering people for the fun of it. Moving on from Andy, we have Claren. Her chapters, while they felt out of place in the beginning of the book, I liked the later chapters, mostly year 25 and 30. I thought those were really well done. As for Noor, Breck, and Gilly, they were meh. They didn't interest me in the least, actually, so I was kind of actually upset with Noor, especially when she was described as finely dressed and had like a ruby choker and this golden prosthetic and everything. I mentioned that in my reading blog. But she has all of these fancy things, but her people are starving. Yeah. Very caring queen there. The Valen chapters felt off. I felt like he was a completely different person from the first couple of chapters we get in his point of view to like the ending chapters and the chapters where we were on Ed Huron with him. That was kind of fishy, the way he just like completely turned a 180 from being really angry at Andy to being her best friend. That didn't make any sense at all. Dex, First few chapters he was a dick, and I'll get to that in my tabs too, because there was one point where he even said in his perspective that he turned Andy in for money. Money meant more to him than love did. But then a few chapters later we find out why he really turned Andy in, and he's a love-struck fool through the entirety of the book after that. Which, I have to say, this love-struck fool persona of his, I liked a lot better than the jackass we started out with. Now, General Cortaz. I actually liked his manipulation of the characters and his cruelty towards the end. Sorry, I can't speak. I actually really enjoyed those parts. I think if I had to choose a favorite character, it would be General Cortaz. Mostly because it's like he pretty much does what he wants to do, and really we don't have to guess and choose with him. He's also the one perspective we don't get in the book. That could be why I like him so much. We didn't really know much about him other than the fact that he's a manipulative jerk who likes cutting tongues out of people's bodies. And to end things off before I get to the tabs, I have a few miscellaneous questions. The first one is, why does Andy have metal cheekbones? This was never answered in this book. The 534 pages, we get nothing from that. 2, why is everyone frickin' humanoid? Why? Every alien is described as human, pretty much. I don't recall any. I mean, they may have extra limbs, they may have webbed feet, but they are all described as human, and that makes me mad. Especially at the beginning with the human frog Voldemort guy. If you guys want to know more about the whole Voldemort guy, you'll have to watch my my reading vlog, because that visual was just too much for me. How does this government work? What is a capital planet? Everyone has the same religion. Why? See, these are things I've already covered, but these are just questions that I want answered. And what the hell is a galactic year? This makes no sense, because there are 5 suns in this galaxy, and every planet rotates the sun at a different speed. So, there is no way you can have a galactic year. It's impossible. Every planet would have their own separate year, and unless there's something that makes the planets all have one year that overlap, and that's what you count as a galactic year, which is flimsy as well, because I don't think that's actually possible. Yeah, well, I guess the planets align and stuff like that, that's possible. Is that what they call a galactic year? I don't know, it's never explained.